What's up YouTube? This is Ebelboy with another knife review. This time I want to talk about the Zero Tolerance 0561, a knife that shook the knife community to its very foundations since it was first announced at the 2011 Blade Show. To be exact, it wasn't the 0561 that drew so much attention, but the 0560. But as these are identical knives except for the different colored G10 handle scale, everything about the 0560 also applies to the 0561. And why was and still is that knife of so much interest? Because it is a Rick Hinderer design, one of the more famous knife makers we have. And the 0561 bears a strong resemblance to the Hinderer XM18, which sells for 3 or 4 times the price of the Zero Tolerance, depending on the configuration. So although the Zero Tolerance is a bargain compared to the Hinderer, in Europe there's usually a high extra charge on American knives, often twice the dollar amount in euros. So I was happy to be pointed to a reasonable offer by my fellow German YouTube colleague Sven Cologne, who also bought and reviewed a Zero Tolerance 0560. Danke Sven für den Hinweis. By the way, I chose the 0561 because it was in stock and the 0560 wasn't. But to be honest, I'm glad I bought the brown handle version. It is a welcome relief in my collection, where about 3/4 of the knives have black handle scales. Rumor has it, by the way, that Zero Tolerance will expand the 0560 series with even more different handle colors, but as far as I know, there has yet to be an official announcement. Let's go over through the specs real quick. The blade length is 95 millimeters, the handle length is 127 millimeters, which makes it an overall length of 222 millimeters. The blade thickness is 4 millimeters and the weight is 165 grams. So all in all, it's a pretty large knife, maybe even a little bit too large for my small to medium-sized hands. But the ergonomics are pretty comfortable nonetheless. A lot of that has to do with the 3D machine handle scales. The surface has this reptile skin-like texture and is slightly curved. The G10 scale sits on a steel liner with which is milled out to the max for weight reduction. I hope you can see this. And even the titanium scale has some milled out pockets just to make it lighter. The knife is screwed together with torque screws, but notice the pivot screw needs a smaller bit than the other ones. There's a lot of jimping on the handle for good traction. But I must say that jimping is really aggressive, especially on the thumb ramp and the disengagement bar. I had to rework that with some fine-grained sandpaper because it irritated my skin. Or maybe I shouldn't have played so much with the knife, who knows. But after some careful sanding, it is much better now. The frame lock looks pretty beefy and works just as fine. I had problems with disengaging the lock bar when the knife was new, because there is no finger choil opposite of the lock bar. You kind of press down on the bar instead of to the side, and it rubbed against the frame. You can even see some marks here. Very unpleasant with that aggressive jimping. What I did was I applied some graphite powder where the blade and the lock make contact, and now it works like a charm. Also note the lock bar stabilizer, which ensures that you will not overextend the lock bar when disengaging it. Another nice feature is the pocket clip, which can be set to 4 positions: left side, right side, tip up and tip down carry. which makes this a completely ambidextrous knife. The pocket clip is a deep pocket carry variant with excellent strength to hold the knife in place and yet not to damage your pocket. The pivot is something very special because there are no washers as in most knives, but ball bearings. Zero Tolerance calls this the KVT, which stands for Kershaw Velocity Technology. It makes the deployment of the blade extremely smooth, especially when using the flipper. There are also ambidextrous thumb studs, but in my impression these function more as an additional stopping bar at the beginning of the handle. For me, the flipper is the quickest and most comfortable way of deploying the blade. Talking about the blade, this one comes in a drop point design with a long swedge and a high flat grind. The initial sharpness was and still is superb. The finish is stone washed, and you also find your laser etched logos and information. Check out the 3D effect on the ZT logo. A fancy detail. The blade steel is Elmax from Austria, which is a powder metallurgic steel just like CPM S30V. This is quite some exotic material in the knife world, but concerning to the manufacturer, the emphasis lies on wear resistance and corrosion resistance. To be honest, I doubt most people will use their 0560 to a point where the steel quality becomes a factor, but I'm excited to hear from the ones who do. For me personally, this knife is a collector's item, as it is too large for me to be carried as an EDC knife and too expensive to be confiscated, because unfortunately this knife is illegal to carry in public here in Germany, and for heavy duty tasks which this knife could perform without any problems, I'd rather pick a fixed blade knife. But it will sure come into operation at the next zombie apocalypse. So that's it for today, folks. Thank you very much for watching. Be sure to check out my other videos, and if you like what you see, please subscribe to my channel. I'm trying to put out videos on a regular basis. Thanks again, and see you around.